There's a moment, exactly 3 days into starvation, where your body makes a decision no doctor can override and no willpower can stop. It picks an order for which parts of you get sacrificed first, second, third, and the order it chooses is not what you'd expect. Your fat isn't first. Your muscle isn't first. Something else is. Let's start with what actually happens, hour by hour, because the real timeline is stranger than most people assume. Hour 1 without food, almost nothing changes. Your body is still running on the meal you ate this morning, breaking down glucose like it always does. The same quiet process that's been keeping you upright since breakfast without you ever once noticing it happening. By hour 12, that fuel is running low. Your liver starts releasing stored sugar called glycogen, a backup tank most people don't even know they're carrying. It's enough for about a day, maybe a day and a half if you're not moving much. Then, somewhere around hour 18 to 24, the glycogen runs out. And this is where your body makes its first real decision. It switches to fat. Not because fat is precious, because fat is expendable. Your body has been storing it for exactly this scenario for your entire life, just in case. Enzymes break it down into fatty acids and something called ketones, an alternate fuel your brain can actually run on when sugar isn't available. You can sometimes smell this shift happening. A faint, sweet, almost fruity scent on the breath. The byproduct of your own fat being converted into emergency fuel in real time. This is the metabolic state a lot of people now chase on purpose, through intermittent fasting or low-carb diets. At this stage, your body isn't in danger. It's just switching tanks, the way it has for every one of your ancestors during every lean season they ever survived. But somewhere around the 48 to 72 hour mark, something changes. Fat alone isn't enough anymore, especially to keep your brain and organs running at full demand. And this is the moment from the opening. The moment your body picks an order. In 1944, physiologist Ansel Keys at the University of Minnesota ran one of the only controlled human starvation studies ever conducted. 36 conscientious objectors volunteered to be deliberately, scientifically starved for 6 months, so doctors could finally learn how to safely treat famine survivors once World War II ended. What Keys documented, hour by hour, week by week, became the blueprint for almost everything we now know about this process. Here's the order his data revealed. First to go, skeletal muscle you're not actively using. Then a process called autophagy kicks in. Your own cells start digesting their damaged or unnecessary internal components, breaking old proteins down into raw material just to keep something functioning. Then your immune system gets quietly deprioritized, which is part of why prolonged starvation makes people far more vulnerable to infection, not just thinner. The belly often swells with fluid even as the rest of the body wastes away, a condition doctors call kwashiorkor, the body holding onto water because it no longer has enough protein in the blood to keep that fluid where it belongs. And then, this is the detail almost nobody expects. Your body starts breaking down your heart, not metaphorically, literally. The heart is a muscle. And in extended starvation, the body will cannibalize cardiac tissue for protein the exact same way it cannibalizes your biceps. Autopsies of severe famine victims have documented hearts shrunk to a fraction of their normal mass. Your body, in its blind triage, is quite literally eating the organ keeping you alive. Because in that moment, raw protein matters more to it than long-term cardiac function. It has no way of knowing it's borrowing against a debt it can't repay. History has tested this on real people more than once. During the 1981 hunger strikes in Northern Ireland, 10 men refused food entirely. Doctors monitoring them watched this exact sequence play out in real time. Fat, then muscle, then the slow involvement of the heart, and documented that most of the men survived between 46 and 73 days before their bodies finally gave out, almost always from cardiac failure at the very end of the sequence, not from anything sudden. But here's where it gets stranger. The most dangerous moment in starvation isn't the starving itself. It's being fed again. It's called refeeding syndrome, and it has killed more rescued famine victims and liberated prisoners than most people outside of medicine realize. When a severely starved body suddenly receives food again, especially carbohydrates, it triggers a sudden, large insulin spike. That insulin drives phosphate, potassium, and magnesium rushing out of the bloodstream and into cells all at once, faster than the body can compensate. Blood phosphate levels can crash within hours, and phosphate is required for nearly every energy reaction in your heart and lungs. The result, documented in liberated concentration camps in 1945 and in famine relief efforts since, is sudden cardiac and respiratory failure, sometimes within a day of a starving person finally getting a meal. The body that survived weeks without food can be killed by kindness, delivered too quickly. This is exactly why modern famine relief and clinical nutrition protocols reintroduce food in tiny, carefully measured amounts, monitored hour by hour, instead of giving a starving body the meal every instinct in the room is screaming for it to have. In hospitals today, this still means tracking blood phosphate levels almost obsessively for the first several days, sometimes adjusting a feeding plan by the milligram because the gap between saving a starved person and accidentally killing them with food can be that narrow. And there's an even stranger layer underneath all of this, one that has nothing to do with you and everything to do with people who don't exist yet. During the Dutch hunger winter of 1944, a famine that struck the occupied Netherlands in the final months of the war, pregnant women went through exactly this sequence. Fat, muscle, the body's brutal triage. Decades later, researchers studying their children found something nobody expected. The children, who had been starved only in the womb, carried measurable, lifelong differences in metabolism, in weight, in heart disease risk, even in the chemical markers on their own DNA. The famine had ended in 1945. Its biological signature was still being read out of bodies 60 years later. Your body's triage protocol isn't just defending you. In certain circumstances, it appears to leave a note for the next generation about exactly how hard things were. And compared to other animals, human bodies are actually bad at this. An emperor penguin can fast for up to 4 months straight during incubation, burning through nearly half its body weight without the kind of organ damage a human would suffer in a fraction of that time. A hibernating bear somehow preserves its muscle almost entirely across an entire winter of not eating, something human astronauts and bedridden patients can only dream of. Evolution handed plenty of species an elegant, low-damage starvation mode. It handed us a blunt, sometimes self-destructive triage system instead, one that, left unchecked for long enough, will eat its own engine room rather than shut down gracefully. Now here's the part worth actually sitting with. None of this is your body malfunctioning. Every stage, the glycogen, the fat, the muscle, the autophagy, even the heart as a last resort, is a sequence your body has run successfully for hundreds of thousands of years anytime a famine hit, anytime a hunt failed, anytime winter ran longer than the food supply could survive. It's not random damage. It's an inherited triage protocol, refined across an almost unimaginable number of ancestors who needed exactly this system to survive long enough to find the next meal, and who, by surviving, handed the exact same protocol down to you. And it's still in there, right now, dormant, in you, reading this in a room with a refrigerator probably less than 50 feet away. Most of us will never trigger it on purpose, and very few of us will ever need it by accident. But the protocol hasn't gone anywhere. The order is still written into you. Fat, then muscle, then your own cells eating themselves, then, if nothing changes, your own heart, spent in defense of itself. Somewhere underneath everything you think of as automatic, hunger, appetite, the mild discomfort of skipping a single meal, there's a far older system waiting. One that has already decided in advance exactly what it's willing to sacrifice of you, and in what order, long before you'd ever have to ask it to. It never asks permission, and it never explains itself in advance. It simply waits, fully formed, inherited intact from every ancestor who ever needed it, for a moment you will most likely never reach. And if you ever did reach it, you wouldn't be told the order out loud. You'd just feel hunger fade into something quieter, while somewhere inside you, a decision was already being made about which parts of you mattered most and which parts of you the rest of you was willing to spend.